if you put your hope in the Messiah, he's your true treasure. He's the one thing that will live up to all that you place upon him and more. And the sooner you realize it, the happier you will be. But I have to give you 2 warnings about the Messiah. 2 warnings. Number 1, the Messiah will turn your world upside down. About 1,000 years after Hannah wrote her song, there was another young Jewish girl that wrote a very similar song. We know her as Mary of Nazareth. Her song is found in Luke 1, 46 through 55. Scholars call it the Magnificat, which means magnify, the first words of the song. It's very similar to Hannah's song. She didn't copy the words, but we can imagine that when little Mary had her visit from Gabriel, and then she was wondering that God had chosen her. She was in awe of the fact that God had sent an angel to select her to be the mother of the Messiah. She must have thought back to what she'd learned at her mother's knee and her father's knee about Hannah and that song that Hannah had written. And inspired by that, she came up with a song that sounded very similar. It had the same themes. Let me just give you an example. I'm not going to read both songs for you again. But here's something Hannah's song says. 1 Samuel 2, 4 through 5. The bows of the mighty are broken, but the feeble bind on strength. Those who were full have hired themselves out for bread, but those who were hungry have ceased to hunger. Now listen to this part of Mary's song. Luke 1, 51 through 53. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the mighty from their thrones and exalted those of humble estate. He has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent away empty. What both women are saying is, God is a God that turns things upside down. Those who think they're high and mighty get brought low. Those who are humble get exalted. When Jesus grows up, one of the things he says over and over and over again is the first will be last, and the last will be first. Think about it again. How many times does God choose the barren woman instead of the woman who's able to give birth? How many times does he choose the poor man instead of the wealthy one? How many times does he choose the ignored person, the forgotten person, instead of the exalted person? Over and over again, God turns things upside down, and we see it in the reaction of people to Jesus. Jesus is no sooner than born than the king of his nation wants to kill him. His religious leaders, the religious leaders of the nation who know all the prophecies of the Messiah, they don't show up at Bethlehem, even though they've heard from these kings who come from the east, these messengers, the wise men, that a Messiah has been born in Bethlehem. They don't show up. And later on, those same religious leaders want to put Jesus to death, just like King Herod did when he was a baby. Isn't it amazing that the people who were the wealthiest and the most powerful and the most knowledgeable rejected Jesus by and large, but those who were despised and those who were rejected, they clung to him. They ran to him. They flocked to him for salvation. Because guess what? The good news is only good news if you really want your world to be turned upside down. That's the only way it works. Because if you're a person who says, I'm basically pretty good, I just need a little help to get into heaven, it doesn't work that way. I'm pretty successful. I've got my life pretty much together. I just need a little divine help to get over the top and get the things that I want. If I show up in church and if I give my tithe and if I pray and I act right, God's going to give me all the things that I want. The life that I've always wanted, it doesn't work that way. But if you're willing to come to God and say, Lord, I believe in you and I believe in your son, Jesus, and I want to serve you with all my heart, with all the gifts you've given me, all the blessings you've given me. I want to bless you back with them. I want to love people in your name. Then you'll see the happiness and the joy that comes from following the Messiah. Are you that broken sinner who comes to the king asking for rescue, who comes to the priest asking to be made holy? Then you will get exactly what you're seeking. The Messiah will turn your world upside down. Now, the second warning is watch out for false messiahs. Just a quick history lesson. About 100 years after Jesus, Israel had been devastated. In 70 AD, the Romans had actually come in and destroyed the city of Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, killed thousands. The Jews themselves were still around. They used to worship on the ruins of the temple, up on the Temple Mount. And then a hero arose, a guy named Simon Bar Kokhba, which means son of the star. He was sort of in the tales people would tell about him, he was almost a Jewish Superman. They said he could catch the cannonballs or the boulders that would be thrown by the Roman catapults and throw them back. He could whip 1,000 Romans single-handedly, and people began to believe that he was the Messiah. In fact, the greatest rabbi of the time, Rabbi Akiva, proclaimed him Messiah, and he led a rebellion against the Romans in 135 AD, and it was promptly crushed. And not only were thousands killed, but the Romans said, "We've had enough of you Jews," and they banned them from Jerusalem, where they did not have access for another 500 years. They put a temple to Zeus on the Temple Mount, and it was not displaced until the Muslims came in and built a mosque there. You know, the Jews themselves didn't possess Jerusalem until 1967, and to this day, they don't have ownership of the Temple Mount. There's a great danger in placing your faith in the wrong Messiah. And I've seen it happen over and over again. As people, otherwise good people, have said, "I need this one thing to be happy. And so I will leave my marriage. I will break the law of God. I will destroy my family. I will do an incredibly selfish thing, but I need to do this in order to be happy." And does it make them happy? No. It brings bitterness and it brings sorrow. I'm a single adult, and I know that this person is not right for me. I know this is not who God would want me to marry, but it's better than being lonely and only to find out, actually, no. Being alone with God is far, far better than being married without him. I long for success in this area of life. I long for approval from this group of people. I long for the right lifestyle, and so I will sell my soul. Little do I know that in selling my soul, I gain the world but lose what matters most. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen to us is to get exactly what we want.